What's up, everybody? Welcome into another YouTube live show tonight. I am John Kurtz, and I tell you what, the goal was to start this thing by 7:30. I've been doing pretty good with that on Sundays. A little tougher for me during the week when I'm working in the office, but it's a good thing that I was a half hour later tonight because right as I'm getting ready to hop on here, and I mean, like, I was getting ready to go tweet the link to the live show, like the last step before I actually go live. I'm on Twitter and I see this Dennis Dodd article drop about ESPN being out on the Pac 12. And it's all through the Big 12. Apparently, ESPN has told the Big 12 they're only going to be dealing with three conferences. They already have deals with the ACC, the Big 12, and the SEC, which would mean that they are out on being that primary rights holder for the Pac 12, which is pretty big and significant news here. And when you pair it with ESPN saying earlier this week that it is inevitable that they are going to go direct to consumer, I don't think that's great news for the Pac 12. I do not think that is great news for the Pac 12. So, hey, we're going to digest all of this. I mean, the rest of the show, and frankly, I was looking forward to the show because it's a topic that I really am excited to sink my teeth into. It's what Brent Yormark is trying to do with the Big 12, his latest innovations, which are going to be allowing like a lot more access in locker rooms, in huddles during games, in-game interviews, stuff like that during Big 12 events. And then the big one that has been fairly controversial, certainly has been polarizing, maybe is the better way to say it, not necessarily controversial, but polarizing, has been Brett Yormark's decision to take the Big 12 to Mexico and start playing football and basketball games, plus maybe more sports to come in Mexico. And that is a topic I am willing to really get into and discuss because I love what Yormark's doing, being as innovative as he is. And I know that is something that a lot of people really hate. They hate the idea of it, but I'm going to explain to you why you need to be open to it. If you're a fan of this conference, you need to be open to it. So hopefully we'll have plenty of time to get to that. But obviously we are going to start with this story about what's going on with ESPN and the Pac-12. So, man, that changes things. This takes me back to the live radio days when sometimes you have a whole show prepped and then a breaking news bomb drops on you and everything changes. It has been a while. It has been a while, frankly, since I have done that. And I can already see in the chat pushback to Mexico. I know there's going to be some pushback, but you guys really need to hear this thing out, man. It can be pretty divisive, but I think it is smart. I think it's a pretty shrewd move by Brett Yormark here. So that's pretty much it. I mean, let me see. I had maybe another story or two. The Pac-12 does have a meeting tomorrow, but it's fairly anticlimactic because the presidents are not going to be there. So it's just athletic directors. It says Pac-12 executives and campus administrators, but you're not going to get the presidents there. So it means they can't really do anything significant. It's not going to be anything regarding the TV contract or expansion or anything like that because they're just not going to have the necessary parties there. So we can read you the John Wilner blurb on that. But when I saw the headline, I thought, okay, interesting. They've got a meeting this week, but it appears that is going to be fairly toothless as far as anything of significance is concerned. So anyway, that's basically the outline. We've got kind of two big main stories here. If you are just joining us, one of them is ESPN dipping out on the Pac-12, and then the other one is going to be the Big 12 going to Mexico and the Big 12 allowing extra access behind the scenes, in locker rooms, sidelines during games, that sort of thing. So with that being said, I am going to start getting to your donations. If you want to be a part of the chat tonight, all you have to do is click the $ below the chat box where it says say something, like our friend R. Webb has already done. It will pin your chat up at the top of the screen for me, ensures that I see it, and ensures that that your voice is heard here on the chat tonight. That is the way you can guarantee that you get on the show tonight. You can control the content. You can voice your opinion. You can ask whatever questions you have. And at the same time, you are supporting the work that I'm doing and bringing you Big 12 content here on a regular basis. And I could not do it without your support. I genuinely appreciate all of you guys who do that. Really, really, truly do appreciate all of your support. You can also support me on Venmo at John-Kurtz-4 if you prefer to do it that way, or if you are somebody that is catching up to this after the fact, you didn't hit the live show, you can support me on Venmo, John-Kurtz-4, once again, to do that. A totally free way to support the channel is just simply to like the video. All it takes is one click, totally free. That helps me with the YouTube algorithm. Would appreciate it if you guys could all do that. Also, leave a comment on the video before, during, after, whatever it might be. Love me, hate me, agree, disagree. leave comments. All of that interaction really does help me with the YouTube algorithm too. And once again, is completely free. And if you have not subscribed to the channel, please do so now. Make sure you're subscribed. Make sure you click that bell so you get alerts and know when I'm dropping content and when it is that I am going live. Okay, we're gonna start with our web. I also do have another donation that was made via Venmo before the show that I want to get to. Shout out to my guy Michael. I want to make sure that I get that in. But our web says, think about it, John. The Big 12 preseason basketball spectacular in Mexico City lets the Big 12 print more bills. Be Izzo. Yeah, well, it sounds like that's the way it's going. It would be football in Monterrey and basketball in Mexico City. I'm going to get to the full details of it, and shout out to the Houston Chronicle, who was the first to break it. Then we got subsequent stories from Sports Illustrated and Ross Dellinger. The Athletic also wrote up a story. So we have a couple different reports here, but the most in-depth came from the Houston Chronicle. And that makes sense, right? Houston being the closest Big 12 school to Mexico. I looked it up today, like 270 miles from the border. And hey, if you added San Diego State, you'd be even closer, right? I mean, the Big 12 has a lot of potential tentacles here to reach down into Mexico, which seems to have an appetite for American football and basketball. So you can start to see where we're headed with all of this. But I digress. I'm going to hold off on diving full bore into that until a little bit later on. I hope that you will understand our web, but I appreciate the comment there, and I appreciate you being somebody open to this. I mean, that was going to be my message. I was intending to originally start the show with this message of like, just approach this with an open mind. One of my favorite things to do is take a topic like this where I think a lot of people are kind of stuck in the old way of thinking, a more traditional way of thinking about all of this and how college sports operate, and just try to open your mind to something. Just try to make you, and it's uncomfortable, I understand, but just make you open up to an idea that you initially bristle at. Like you're initially like not thrilled with the idea. I very much enjoy trying to do that, especially when I feel very passionately about it. So I will try to do that later on here in the show. But for now, well, I see we got Starter 179. What's up, Starter 179? Starter 179 says Lubbock to Mexico City is only a 2-hour flight. Smart. There you go. Yeah, Texas Tech, one of the universities that I think does play a role in this. In fact, I mean, you have quite the Texas connection. You might add Arizona and Arizona State, right? I mean, you can see how this is all starting to connect. So yes, I appreciate the comment there, Starter 179. Click the $sign below the chat box where it says say something if you want to make your voice heard and drop in here on the chat tonight and support the work that I'm doing here on the channel. Let me get to my guy Michael's question here real quick. He said he was not going to have time to make it on the show tonight, but you guys have seen him. Mikey G, as he is on Twitter. Michael says, I can't help but think the Big Ten would be happy to take Oregon and Washington at a discounted rate, but need the Big 12 to pull teams first so they can offer a lifeline discount to keep the culture from ripping the conference apart. It's interesting. I mean, basically what you're saying there is kind of the tone that I felt like we got from some of the speculation and reporting and comments that we had from Tony Petitti, the new Big Ten commissioner, the other day that we talked about extensively on the last live show. I do think that's a fairly accurate read on the situation right now, that the Pac-12 doesn't have the appetite to just deliver the kill shot, or the Big Ten rather doesn't have the appetite right now to just deliver a kill shot to the Pac-12 and take Oregon and Washington. It doesn't seem like that desire is really totally there. But yes, if the Pac-12 really started hemorrhaging, they lost the four corner schools, it looked like it was all going down, that's when you would probably start to see them be like, all right, well, now seems like a decent time to do this. Oregon and Washington would probably be in a position to be like, whatever, we'll take it. I mean, whatever your offer is going to be, 60%. We need a spot. I think that's a pretty good thought there from you, Michael. And I generally would be in agreement with that right now. I do not think you're going to see the Big Ten make the first move anytime soon on all of that. But as a part of Petitti's comments, he did say like, hey, it's my job to make sure that this conference continues to be stronger in the future. As well as where it's at currently. I'm paraphrasing there with his comments, but it also leads you to believe he'll be paying attention to what's going down there, and he'll be paying attention to how everything unfolds with the Pac-12 TV deal. And speaking of that, boy, that's an A+ transition, everybody. Let's get to the Dennis Dodd article right away. Here's the headline. It was dropped 5 minutes ago. Well, that was probably when I clicked on it. So we're looking at like 15 minutes ago. This is about 15 minutes old. Dennis Dodd's article says Pac-12's murky future finds shred of clarity with ESPN appearing out as option for primary media rights. Tell you what, somebody who is being who's very plugged into the Big 12 these days is definitely Dennis Dodd, because all this actually is basically a Big 12 story. This is basically a Big 12 story, even though it's about the Pac 12. So here's the first paragraph. What has long been assumed throughout the industry became a reality this week as ESPN appears to be out as an option to take the Pac 12's primary media rights as the conference continues to seek a new deal. Multiple sources tell CBS Sports. So again, I will stress, he says out as an option to take the Pac 12's primary media rights. So I guess one caveat to kind of how I frame this at first would be that wouldn't necessarily mean that they would be totally out on anything, but out at least in being the primary rights holder and taking the best inventory and the most inventory. So they might be a small part of it, I suppose, potentially here, but not a big part of it. And really, I've only scanned this article briefly, so I'm probably speaking a little bit out of turn there, but that's the way I read that first paragraph. Second paragraph. The situation developed at the Fiesta Summit spring meetings this week when Big 12 officials were told by ESPN executives its league was one of 3 conferences the network would be airing in the future. So at this meeting, ESPN tells Big 12 execs, hey, you guys are one of 3 conferences that we are going to be airing in the future. And if you do the math on that, ESPN already has agreements with the Big 12, the SEC, and the ACC. So that would mean the Pac-12 is out. And here's a quote from a Big 12 official through Dodd's article. It says, this is the first time publicly ESPN said we're not doing anything with the Pac-12. That's a Big 12 administrator aware of the exchange, told CBS Sports under the condition of anonymity. While ESPN will not be contending for top-tier Pac-12 games, it may be interested in a smaller package secondary rights for games specifically in the late-night window. Bam, there you go. All right, I guess I read the first paragraph correctly there. ESPN won't be contending for top-tier Pac-12 games, but it may be interested in a smaller package secondary rights for games specifically in the late-night window. Sources close to the talks emphasize they are taking a never-say-never approach when it comes to potential partners as negotiations continue. So the idea here would be that the Pac-12 is kind of missing out on the most exposure. We've talked a lot about the exposure versus money components at play here and trying to balance that, and that the Pac-12 would need to strike a good balance of that. You probably could get more sheer money out of just the straight up streamers, your Apple or Amazon option, but you're going to also want a presence on linear cable, and that being ESPN, Fox. I mean, we've seen the CW, we've seen Ion. Those two mentioned, whether you take it as half joking or serious, those have been mentioned as well here. So any of those options, you need some of that. You need people to be able to just flip it on at a bar, right? You can't, it's a little bit too early to be all in on just all streaming. You need a nice blend of that. Now, if ESPN is going to pick up just your late night window, your late night games, I wouldn't imagine that they're going to be paying a premium amount of money for that. That's going to give you some level of exposure, but it's also not going to be your top games. Like if that were the case, the way that I read that, it'd be like ESPN could take like game number 3 or something like that and throw it on the Pac-12 after dark sort of window. So it's not going, your best games would not be getting the ESPN exposure there. Your best games would theoretically, I guess, be on a streamer here, unless it's going to be a more non-conventional traditional partner. Because I mean, we've long heard, and I know there was some debate about this between Canzano and everybody in Big 12 country, like how involved Fox actually is. That was a news cycle back and forth where people were saying Fox was out. Canzano was saying, no, that's not true. So I guess it depends on who you really believe on that. But I know that at least I'm pretty sure we're going to get another mention about Fox. In fact, we are here in the next paragraph from Dennis Dodd in this article. So I'm going to continue quoting from Dodd here. He says, if ESPN is not interested in the Pac-12's Tier 1 games, the most desirable, likely highest rated contests, there doesn't appear to be an obvious brand name suitor for the league. Other major linear platforms, including Fox, appear not to be interested in primary Pac-12 rights that would provide the bulk of income in a new media deal. So even Dodd is choosing his words fairly carefully there, saying other major linear platforms, including Fox, appear not to be interested in the primary Pac-12 rights. He throws in the word appear, so it doesn't say they aren't, but he says they appear not to be interested in primary Pac-12 rights that would provide the bulk of income in a new media deal. I would still say, like, from a money standpoint, I don't know that that's the worst thing in the world for the Pac-12, because a lot of the speculation about ESPN had been that they were not going to pay as much as they perhaps would have before they did the deal with the Big 12, that there may have been a deal on the table at one point in time that was much more lucrative for Pac-12 schools that they didn't bite at signing early on in the process. Since then, the Big 12 has swooped in. ESPN's going through layoffs. They're cutting back on some of these streaming costs. Everybody's worried about other competition coming into the sphere, like live sports competition. And that has really hurt the value here of what the Pac-12 could get. Next paragraph says, it was reiterated during the conference's spring meetings that the Pac-12 remains confident it will land TV media rights deals with a major carrier for its Tier 1 content. Sources tell CBS Sports. There's been speculation lately that NBC Universal, specifically USA Network, could be involved. All right, so I guess that's the latest iteration here. We've gone from ION to the CW, now to USA. So we're just shuffling through all these different networks for the Pac-12 potentially. I'm sure USA is on a number. Like, I'm sure that's not a very difficult channel to get. I'm sure that would be pretty widely broadcasted. That's not going to be an ideal situation, but much like I tried to say with the CW and ION and all that stuff, particularly the CW, it was like, hey, it's not as bad as like the joke and the meme surrounding it would appear to be, right? I mean, that's what's going to make it look a lot worse, just the joke factor there. But in terms of the practicality of it and where you could find it, it's actually not quite as bad as you might think. I would file USA probably in that same area. Let's see what shows are on USA Network. Set this up here. We've got Crisley Knows Best. I don't know what Mr. Robot is. Chicago PD. American Ninja Warrior. All right, so we could get like American Ninja Warrior rolling right into Oregon State Cal. I could get down with that. There's a Chucky TV show. What are we doing with that? Suits. We've got Suits. This Mr. Robot continues to come up. Anybody out there watch Mr. Robot? Psych. All right, you can have a new episode of Psych followed by Oregon State, Washington State. That sound good to anybody? Does that sound like where we're headed in Pac-12 country? It would appear that might be the case. I crack jokes, but here Dennis Dodd is about to send it right back in my face. So bring it on. Dennis Dodd says USA Network has a long history of sports coverage back to its debut as MSG Network in 1977. That included having a college football package from 1980 to 86. Hey, look at that. All right. Channeling back to the mid-'80s. NBC Universal is currently renegotiating its media rights deal for WWE Monday Night Raw, which could impact its interest in the Pac-12. Fox is also involved in ongoing negotiations to renew WWE SmackDown, which airs Friday nights in primetime. Wow, competing with Vince McMahon. You tell me the Pac-12 may get blocked here by WWE? That's pretty funny. That's a pretty entertaining thought there. I don't know. Maybe you get George Kliavkov at the same table as Vince McMahon and just have them slug it out, just debate who's getting what. I'm sure George Kliavkov would come out okay and all that, right? I don't know. By the end of it, he might be on like an episode of WWE Raw. We were talking about like the storylines of the CW. What storylines could we incorporate into that? How about like some wrestling storylines here? How about some WWE storylines involving George Kliavkov? How could Vince get him involved in some sort of feud, right? He could become the Stone Cold to the Vince McMahon of the mid-'90s, right? The Attitude Era. Look at me flexing wrestling knowledge that I don't really have. But yes, I would enjoy that. I don't, if the R-Webs of the world, anybody out there has some good wrestling storylines for George Kliavkov here, I would be very open to that. Jeremy says Vince McMahon could damn near knock George's head clean off his body. Yeah, probably so. Speaking of WWE, WWE CEO Nick Khan said of the Pac-12 in March, I think they're in a tough spot. It's a quote that we've seen before. Dodd included it in this article. He then goes on to say, ESPN has upcoming negotiations to consider itself with the NBA contract coming onto the market and UFC set to enter a new negotiating window. WWE and UFC recently merged into a single company. I'm not sure that I even knew that. Last year, ESPN lost Big Ten media rights for the first time in more than 40 years. Big 12 filled a portion of the hole in that schedule by jumping ahead of the Pac-12. Pac-12 has been seeking much. According to sources who have speculated on what form a Pac-12 deal could find. The league's Tier 1 content would likely be categorized as a minimum of 2 games a week for a rights holder across a typical 14-week season. Those 28 games may be valued at approximately $200 million, an average of $7 million per game. So, okay, $200 million for the prime. He's speculating here that the primary games could be valued at $200 million, which, if you divide that by 10 teams in the league, comes out to $20 million per school. Obviously, well behind the 31 plus that the Big 12 got, but that's not all the inventory. You would still have other inventory outside of just the 2 games per week that you could throw out there. So, I mean, that's probably a deal that's going to get you at worst in the neighborhood of the mid 20s and is going to start to approach what the Big 12's number is. Dodd goes on to say it has been assumed that an approximate $300 million media rights deal might be needed to keep some Pac-12 schools from jumping to the Big 12. If a Tier 1 deal is closed at that valuation, the league would need to seek at least $100 million for the estimated 47 to 50 remaining games in the Pac-12 inventory, based on the league remaining at 10 teams. Yeah, so that's kind of outlining what I was saying there. You'd have to be going and finding a bidder, presumably streaming, I guess, at that point. You know, if you were going to do $200 million with USA to get those top 2 games on, and then you had to go to a streamer. So, I mean, now you're starting to talk about this looking like USA for the top 2 games, rest of the games streaming on Amazon, rest of the games streaming on Apple. Maybe more likely Amazon there, because I think the talk with Apple had been that they would want to be more the all-in. Like, if it's going to be a deal with Apple, that they would want to be the ones getting the best inventory there and not just the secondary stuff. So I don't know. All this gets really complicated, and a lot of moving parts are at play here. Still working on this Dennis Dodd article. If you're catching up late here, Dennis Dodd dropped an article right before I came on the air tonight saying that that ESPN has told folks in the Big 12 that they are out on competing for the Pac-12's primary inventory. That they would be out on being the primary rights holder for the Pac-12. Dodd says Oregon and Washington remain the Pac-12's biggest brands. What is not known is what those Pac-12 top-tier games would look like. CBS Sports ranked the top-rated Pac-12 games on TV combined in 21 and 22, not including USC and UCLA. Oregon and or Washington appeared in 4 of the top 5 rated games. Numbers on the Big 12. We're kind of getting backstory here. Sources would not indicate an exact figure that would keep Pac-12 schools from considering a Big 12 move. Arizona President Robert Robbins has similarly declined to provide a number. However, informed speculation suggests the Pac-12 landing within 10% of the Big 12 figure, approximately $28.5 million, may be enough to keep the league together. So, all right, even buried within this Dennis Dodd article, we are getting some interesting nuggets. I mean, I guess it just depends here on how much it is that you put stock into what Dodd is reporting. But it makes it's sensical enough. If you got to $28.5 million within 10% of the Big 12 figure, it might be enough to keep the league together. The thing there is, like, I'm just like, well, how much latitude is granted on that? You know, if you get to 27, are they going to say, well, you didn't hit that 10% mark over this last $1 million here, we are going to bolt? That's what we don't really know. You know, when push comes to shove, when a deal actually gets put on the table, how serious are these teams about jumping? How serious would they be about jumping over a dollar amount like that? You know, if you're $4 million a year off the Big 12 and also taking a bit of a bath and a haircut and exposure, is that combination enough to make you want to jump? Maybe this news about ESPN, maybe the Pac-12's already known this for a while. I mean, who knows? But maybe this news about ESPN would change some of the feelings there too. If you feel like, hey, we're not going to get our best games on the best network. And the other thing to consider again with ESPN is if you don't have a great relationship with them, you may not get as much promotion on the college game days of the world. However, I guess to counter myself there, I would say if you still have the after dark game going, ESPN is probably at least going to throw you some sort of bone. And that's basically the end of the article. One last little thing. Brett Yormark prefers to add the 4 corner schools. And he throws this in again. Sources have indicated for months that there has been at least informal contact between those parties, the 4 corner schools and the Big 12. So there's your Dennis Dodd, I would say, borderline bombshell article. That's pretty big news if indeed ESPN is going to be out on being the primary rights holder for the Big 12. That is pretty significant news for the Pac-12. I will again raise one of those questions, like, is this something that the Pac-12 would have known for a while now, and it's just now getting thrown out there? Like, could this Could this have been the thing that, when all of a sudden it went from Pac-12 presidents were out here being very confident it was going to get done soon. We had the Pac-12 unity statement that came out here and said very near future. Is this what changed it? All of a sudden ESPN said, nah, we're just not going to do this thing. We're not going to take your primary rights here. And that really screwed everything up. And now everybody had to readjust and say, well, no, forget that. This is going to take longer. We're going to have to go back to the drawing board here on what exactly we're going to do. I mean, I'm just purely speculating on all this. It's hard to really know, but that is one way to get it. I mean, you see here, I'll give Pac-12 fans credit here. I mean, you can see where Dennis Dodd's sources clearly are. They're in the Big 12. This is a story about ESPN and the Pac-12, but it's coming from a Big 12 source and an interaction that supposedly happened in front of Big 12 brass from ESPN. So you can see the side that is feeding the info here. But I mean, that'd be a hell of a thing to make up if this is just totally made up, but it would also be a thing to strategically leak if you are the Big 12 here to try and, again, kick a little bit of dirt on the Pac-12. So that may be what is in play here. But I would doubt that is just completely made up. And it has, there's been speculation about this for a while, that it could just be that ESPN is going to be a small part of this and that the rest, the majority of it would go streaming. There has been talk that maybe the deal is like all streaming to Apple, but they would kind of like, I'm using the wrong term here, but sublease out some of that content to a place like ESPN. So I still think a lot of things could be very much in play here as to what actually happens. But visibility, that is, make no mistake, that is the biggest hit that the Pac-12 would take in all this, is just losing that visibility of having their best games on ESPN and having to move more of that towards streaming. So very, very, very interesting stuff there. And I'm actually kind of curious here to check the quote tweets on this thing to see how Dodd's tweet is doing. Let's see. 16 quote tweets. I'm seeing lots of Pac-12 memes, lots of memes of the dog that's like on fire, sitting in the chair in the room that's on fire. We got people getting jokes off at Canzano's expense. I'm looking for Utah fans. I'm looking for Utah fans here in the quote tweets. Give me a Utah fan. I see someone saying, waiting for TJ Altimore to spin this as a positive. I don't see a Utah fan yet. I don't see a Utah fan. No Utah fans in the quote tweets. It must be, while we sit here and, get our talking points from Karen, all hail Lord Karen, all hail Lord Karen at Endeavor. Thank you for the paycheck. While we sit and do that, I guess the Pac-12 Mafia Utah fans, they're all collaborating right now on what the talking point is going to be coming out against this from Dennis Dodd. Not seeing them respond to this quite yet. All right. If you want to weigh in on the conversation tonight, you can do so. Click the $ below the chat box where it says say something. That is how you hop in tonight. Supports the work that I'm doing, bringing you Big 12 content on a week in, week out basis. And I could not do it without all of your help and support. Genuinely appreciate those of you guys who do contribute. Really, really appreciate all of you. Plus, that's a way to get your voice heard. It will pin your chat up at the top for me, so it cuts through all the 250 people that are here in the chat tonight and make sure that you get on. Starter 179 had another one, said Mexico City metro population 23 million. Enough said. Yeah, we're going to dive into that story in detail here in just a minute once I get through the rest of the donations here. Brett Yormark taking the Big 12 international, taking the Big 12 to Mexico. Yes, untapped market. I think that's a big part of this. The Big 12 feels like Mexico is a pretty untapped market here in the college sports world, and they do, yes, have 23 million. I think the number I saw earlier was like 22 point something. So I believe you are correct there, Starter 179. Starter 179 also, this is a good one. You're on fire tonight, Starter 179. I appreciate you. It says Condition of Anonymity would be a good band name. It really would. That is a fantastic band name. We see this a lot. I used to see it a lot in Associated Press articles because way back in the day when I was first starting in my radio career and I was just doing like updates on the daily sports talk show, I would do the little sports updates like at the top and bottom of the hour. And there were a lot of AP articles that you would just copy and paste. And it was always quoting a source on the condition of anonymity. So I feel like I haven't heard that in a while, but we got it in the we got it in the Dennis Dodd story there. So I like that. Condition of Anonymity would be a great band name. I'm with you. Our web, you got some. Our web's got some wrestling stories for me here. If it's going to be Kliavkov versus Vince McMahon at the negotiating table, our web says with Georgie now mute, he's the third Dudley brother. I don't know enough about wrestling to know about the Dudley brothers. I'm gonna have to look that up. I feel like I've heard of them. The first thing that pops up is the Dudley Boys. Is that what we're talking about here? The Dudley Boys, like Boyz, Dudley Boys. Oh, but I also see the Dudley Brothers. All right, I don't know. Wrestling fans, you're gonna have to clear this up for me. I see Dudley Brothers, Dudley Boys, one way or the other, though. I appreciated our web, and hopefully somebody who is more well versed in the wrestling world will be able to take more from your reference there than I did. Our web. My apologies. LA Hornfrog in the building. What's up, LA Hornfrog? Thank you for being here. Appreciate you hopping in. Says, thanks, John. Appreciate your updates. Go Frogs. Hey, there you go. LA Hornfrog. What a time to be alive if you're an LA Hornfrog. I mean, you just had half your roster drafted by the LA Chargers. So congratulations, LA Hornfrog. That's got to be pretty damn exciting for you. I mean, you can just become like a Chargers season ticket holder at this point and go watch all of those dudes play. So, well, maybe not Max Duggan. I would guess Justin Herbert's probably gonna get the starting nod there, but everybody else, that's awesome. Thank you for being here, LA Hornfrog. Happy to do it, my friend. Happy to do it. Robert, what's up, Robert? Robert, thank you for the donation. Robert says Notre Dame plays in Ireland. Approximately 14,000 international students enrolled from Mexico enrolled in U.S. universities in 2019 to 20. Texas obviously borders Mexico. Why not try? Go fight in Yormarks. Thank you, Robert. That is the attitude I'm looking for. I'm not looking for universal tonight. Everybody lauding this decision, saying like, "Oh, this is going to be a home run." You're going to have Big 12 flags flying in Mexico City all over the place. That's not the point of this. To me, the whole point is have an open mind. Brett Yormark is trying to take this brand places and is going to do innovative, creative things because you need to. Because if you keep just going with the status quo, playing games on campus, only playing on Saturdays, if you just offering the standard broadcast, if you keep doing that, you're going to continue to lose and lose and lose you're trying to play the same game that the SEC and the Big Ten are playing. And they can do that because they're in a position of power. They can have it a more traditional way. You have to mix it up, be the innovative conference. And I felt like everybody was really on board with that back in like July 2021. When it felt like you were totally on life support and there were no real great options and you worried about the future and everyone was like, cool, if it has to be playing games on Friday night, playing games on Wednesday night, heavily involving gambling into the broadcast, like whatever it is that you need to do to be creative, everyone seemed to be on board with that. They understood the deal. Now, Big 12 has a little more security. They feel in a better position. You kind of forget how close it was to being basically over at that time. And you get stuck in like your old ways of thinking, like, I just don't like this. I'm just trying to tell you to have an open mind, try to fight against that urge to be like, man, I really wish things were like they were back in the mid 90s. Trust me, I'm there with you. I wish that were the case too, but I'm in a place of acceptance of what the reality is here and knowing what you're going to have to do as the Big 12, which is get pretty innovative here, and going to Mexico appears to be a part of that. So appreciate you weighing in, Robert. If you want to be a part of the show tonight, click that $sign below the chat box where it says say something. That is how you can donate, be a part of the show, make your voice heard, and support the Big 12 content that I bring you weekly. Also, if you could like the video, that helps me out. Like the video, leave a comment. All of that really helps me with engagement. It is totally, totally free. So on the Mexico front, here we go. Brett Yormark taking the Big 12 to Mexico. There's a combination of blurbs from The Athletic, from Sports Illustrated, and then the Houston Chronicle story, which the Houston Chronicle had it first. Chronicle broke this story first. So it says the Big 12 is nearing a deal to play football and men's basketball games in Mexico beginning as soon as 2024. So we're talking about next year. Big 12 could be playing games in Mexico as soon as next year. Here's what you need to know. The agreement, not yet complete, would last for multiple years and is not meant as a one-off experience. So this is not like a one-off game that you're going to just do, try out, see how it goes. No, Yormark is saying, like, we want to commit to doing this. We want to commit to multiple games and doing this. Football games likely would take place in Monterey, and men's basketball in Mexico City, with the potential for more sports in the future. Specific dates and teams involved have not yet been determined. Kansas and Houston are potential teams for a Mexico City basketball game, according to multiple reports, and that is definitely something I saw in multiple places. That Kansas and Houston was thought to kind of be like the crown jewel, what they really wanted to do here, what they really wanted to get out of it. Said this would be the latest outside the box move by Big 12 Commissioner Brett Yormark, who is intrigued by the international success of various pro sports. And that should be the least shocking thing anybody here has seen, right? I mean, his background is much more in professional sports. I mentioned this a lot, but he spearheaded the move of the Brooklyn Nets to Brooklyn from New Jersey. No small undertaking at all. He also got NASCAR, like totally spiked the popularity of NASCAR and got them the biggest sponsorship deal in North American sports history at the time. He's had a knack for this, guys. He's had a knack for making entities much better branding wise. I mean, say what you will about the Brooklyn Nets and some of the disaster on the court for them, but they certainly have become a much cooler brand since getting to Brooklyn. Like, I didn't give a rip about the New Jersey Nets. The Brooklyn Nets at least like had my attention. Like, it was a much cooler brand. NASCAR, I really have zero interest in and never have had much interest in it, but it is definitely more popular now than it seemed to be at other points in life. And Brett Yormark played a big part of that. So he's had a knack for these sorts of things. And if you look at what some of these professional sports leagues are doing, they have tried to have more of an international presence like this. Like, for instance, the NFL. The NFL has tried to go the Mexico route. And I know that has not been, I get it. I can already see everybody in the chat. Like, I know that hasn't been totally smooth sailing. As a Chiefs fan, I'm well aware that has not been totally smooth sailing. I still remember that field out there. But that's not a reason to just shut it down. That's a reason to, if you're stuck in the closed-minded way of thinking and the ways of the past and the old school mindset, that is a convenient out. That is a convenient way for you to just throw up your arms and say, well, you can't do it. There were some footing issues. Who knows? We can't mess with that. No, like, hang on, stay tight. We'll try to get that stuff figured out, work with them to try to get that figured out. And this is just, you got to think much bigger than that. You got to think much bigger than that. You're a league that is going to have to take those sorts of chances. College football has played I'm reading back from the article now. College football has played regular season games in Dublin during the past decade, including a Big Ten game between Nebraska and Northwestern last year. But this would be a larger integration of the Big 12 into the Mexican sports market. The conference had tentative plans to hold regular season league games south of the border for months, with first-year Commissioner Brett Yormark even visiting Mexico City last week. So here's another detail that emerges in this. Yormark is serious about this. Like, if you had any doubt, if you saw this story and you didn't like it and you were hoping that the Big 12 wasn't very serious about this, your hopes seemingly have been dashed, because Brett Yormark has been serious enough to visit Mexico City recently. Says Yormark met with officials and toured potential sites, including the 22,000 plus seat arena at CDMX in Mexico City for basketball. Damn, 22,000 seats for basketball. Football games will be played in Monterey at Estadio BBVA, a 53,000 seat venue nicknamed El Gigante de Acero. So 53,000 for football. I mean, that's not bad. That's pretty standard if you're looking across the Big 12 right now. Let's say Farmageddon in Mexico. Would love Farmageddon in Mexico. The league expects to begin holding basketball games in Mexico during the 2024-25 season and football in the fall of 25. So it looks like this would all be rolled out once you have the new Big 12 out there. You're in the weird in-between period this year, and then once you get to Texas and Oklahoma gone and you've just got the new league the next year, that's when this would all start to roll out. I mean, part of that. Like, can you imagine we've joked about saying, hey, Texas is going to have to go on the road to all four newcomers or whatever you might do to try and screw with them schedule-wise. I mean, imagine coming up to them and being like, hey, guys, why don't you go ditch this home game and go play in Monterey? How about we move Red River to Monterey? That would have been a nice little parting shot for Texas and Oklahoma. Okay. Houston, transitioning to another article here. Houston, along with Baylor, TCU, and Texas Tech, would all offer regional appeal based on proximity to the border. Something to keep in mind there. A source said the Big 12's plan to play in Mexico is an important step, part of the broader vision to nationalize and, in this case, globalize the league's brand. The Big 12, whose 14-team membership spans 3 time zones, has been rumored to have expansion interest in the Pac-12 schools: Arizona, Arizona State, Colorado, Utah, blah, blah, blah. The Big 12's desire to play games in Mexico would follow in the footsteps of the NFL, MLB, and NBA, each having made regular trips south of the border in recent years, while seizing an opportunity to become the first U.S.-based conference to play in the region. There has never been a game between 2 U.S. college football teams played in Mexico. Why Mexico? And here, I think this is a question that a lot of people would have. Why Mexico? Why Mexico? Basketball is an emerging popular sport in the country. The NFL has drawn large crowds, and baseball remains popular. The Big 12 also envisions the country as a largely untapped market. Mexico City is one of the most populous cities in the world, 22 million, and Monterrey is home to about 5 million people. So I know you can say, what market share are you actually going to grab there? But there's 27 million people between those 2 cities that you would be playing games in. If it's even a little bit of it, that could start to go a long ways. And it's not like someone mentioned, 2-hour flight from Lubbock to Mexico City. You start getting fans there, they could be making flights pretty easily to Houston, to Lubbock. If you add Tucson, Tempe, if you add San Diego State, and you just have to go to San Diego, right? I mean, and then the other piece of this, and I'm going to make sure and give credit to my guy, where'd this go? Garrett McClinton from the BYU 24/7 site. He mentions that not only is Houston right there, but Texas Tech, Houston, and UCF are all Hispanic-serving institutions. So valid to point that out too. UCF catering to being a Hispanic-serving institution where they're at. But there are also over 1.5 million LDS members in Mexico. So you have a decent LDS presence, Church of Latter-day Saints. Obviously with the BYU connection there. So that's another entry point for a bunch of people in Mexico here if you're going to play there. And then again, throw on top of that, if you were to expand and add Arizona, Arizona State, San Diego State, some of those options there too. There are more, I guess all that to say, there are more connection points between the Big 12 and Mexico than you would think just on the surface. This is not your dad's or your older brother's Big 12. This is not the Big 12 of 1996 anymore. You've got all the schools in Texas. You've now got Houston. You may be adding more schools there. You've got BYU with the LDS connection. I think this is worthy of exploring. It may not work. It may not catch hold very much, but you need to take these chances. I don't really see what the downside is other than, again, if you're thinking very short term, because I know you'd say you lose a home game. I mean, okay, that's not the greatest thing in the world, but it's also far from the end of the world. And when we're talking about long-term viability of this conference, long-term money-making opportunities here, I think the juice is worth the squeeze in taking these chances. Maybe this isn't the one that hits, but maybe one of the other things really hits. And Yormark is he's casting a wide net on all of this right now. Because lest you forget, the Big 12 has announced a partnership with Rucker Park in New York City to host exhibition basketball games and camps. They have the Big 12 only NFL Combine experience in Frisco. Brett Yormark is trying things. He is doing a lot of things here to take chances. And I just feel like the cross-section of people who were on board with, all right, we're kind of screwed here. We're going to have to figure out creative ways to get money. I'm on board in July 2021 of being creative. And then people who seem to be starkly against this move, I feel like there's a lot of overlap there. You can't have your cake and eat it too. If the idea is you want to go back to the Big 12 and everybody else is just playing 2:30 games on ABC with Keith Jackson on the call and Sis Boomba and all is right with the world and no NIL and everything was simpler. Hey man, I get it. And I kind of agree with you. I mean, I do sort of miss those days. It was a much simpler time. You didn't have to stress and worry about as much as a college sports fan. And also there was more equal access to a title at that point in time. I would love it if we could go back to that. But the problem is we're just not, that's not realistic. The toothpaste is out of the tube. And if you keep trying to play the conventional game, you will just get more and more whitewashed by the Big Ten and the SEC. You can't beat them at their game. It is impossible at this point. They are too far out ahead. There is basically no way that that's happening. It's why we've made fun of so much George Kliavkov's comments that his league was going to catch up to the Pac-12 and Big Ten financially, or that his league was going to catch up to the SEC and Big Ten financially, rather. Clearly a ridiculous comment. Never was going to happen. And you can't, that is not the right strategy to just get mad and flail and say, like, hey, we'll catch up to him eventually doing it the same way. No, you got to be innovative. You got to do it a different way. And to be honest, playing some games in Mexico seems to me like a whole hell of a lot better than having to play games on like a Wednesday night and becoming Maction or something. I mean, I would rather start going that route before you have to go the other. And that may still be coming. I mean, who knows? Who knows what else Brett Yormark has up his sleeve. But this is, put some trust in this guy who has changed the brands of things like NASCAR and the Brooklyn Nets before by thinking this way. Like, this is the problem. You have so many people who are, I get why, once again, but you have so many people who are locked into that way of thinking that is what has kept the Big 12 as a punchline for years before Yormark showed up. It kept the Big 12 as this reactionary, not forward-thinking, not visionary, being held hostage by Texas, all these different traits that we didn't like about the league. If you want to break free from that, break free all the way, man. Start taking some chances. That is my message to you if you are somebody that really doesn't like this. Okay, now I'm going to start working through some more donations here. We'll see if there has been any pushback to that. I will be interested. Our web, what's up, our web? Our web says Dudley Boys. Okay, so it was the Dudley Boys. It was the Dudley Boys, BOYZ. One problem: George can't set a table. Okay. Is this like the table reference? Someone flying through a table in wrestling? I don't know. Hopefully the wrestling fans are getting this more than I am, our web, but I very much appreciate it. And thank you for the clarification on Dudley Boys, BOYZ. Dudley Boys, BOYZ. Daniel, what's up, Daniel? Thank you for being here, my friend, and thank you for your generosity, as always. I appreciate it. Always good to see Cat Fan in Huskerland, a.k.a. Daniel Osborne, here in the chat. And Daniel says, the Big 12 in Mexico. I think the Truck Stop Conference hit it out of the park with Yormark. Hopefully, I will get to watch the basketball tournament live the next time I visit Mexico. That's right, Daniel. You were just in Mexico, right? That wasn't that long ago that you were in Mexico, I believe. You're on some trip, and I may be getting it confused for maybe the foreshadowing from a couple weeks ago. We had somebody who was donating in pesos because they were in Mexico too. So even this channel here, people, that should be enough for you guys. You remember that? I got peso donations the other day from somebody who was on a work trip in Mexico in this chat. We've already started the trend here in this chat, okay? So don't be against going to Mexico when if you're a fan here of this chat, you've already been along those, you've been down that road. You've been down that road, my friends, and nothing happened. We were okay. Everything was A-okay after that happened. So, hey, I think it's a great point there, Daniel. And that would be fun, man. It'd be a great excuse for me to go to Mexico. I would love to do it. I'm actually in the process of getting my passport renewed here. So would absolutely love an excuse to go do it. I mean, watching K-State play there would be very fun. I'm for it. I'm with it. So I agree, Daniel. I think they hit it out of the park with Yormark. I will even say, Daniel, to that, I saw something. Shout out to my guy, Robbie Triano, from the Big 12 channel on Sirius XM. He brought up a good point. He was like, one, some of this seems to be like Brett Yormark kind of auditioning to be like a major sport commissioner. And I'm like, well, yeah, I mean, it would not surprise me if that's like his ultimate career goal. And then he said, Robbie added, like, wouldn't surprise me if that does happen here before too long. And I thought, damn, I think you might be right. And then if that were to happen, I'd be very scared again because I'm like, all right, what's the reaction going to be from the league? Is it going to be like lifelong athletic administrators who are in these AD roles that are going to kind of curl back up and be like, hey, we didn't like being pushed with all that stuff. We want to go back to being more traditional and make that sort of a hire. I would hope that doesn't happen, but that would be my fear. People tend to hire like the opposite of what they have, right? So I know I'm creating a total like hypothetical. This is like anxiety talk, like hypothetical situation that doesn't exist. So we'll push that to the side. But that at least I was like, damn, Robbie, that's a good point, and that makes me nervous. Like, let's keep our guy here and let's let him see more of this plan through. But yes, Daniel, I think he's knocking it out of the park right now and doing what he should be doing, which is pushing the boundaries of folks. And I know, like, at least I definitely believe, just based on some things that I've heard, that like there have been ideas that have been shot down, or certainly ideas that have been given a lot of pushback from those in the Big 12, from people who don't really want to be open like this. Or coaches, certainly like coaches, I think would bristle at a lot of this type of stuff, which is more understandable. So I don't think everybody's opened this with total open arms, but that's the point. He needs to kind of come shake it up. If you want the Big 12 to be different than what it was and a punchline and reactionary, you need some of this. You need somebody who's just going to shake things up like a snow globe a little bit and make things happen. And that is definitely what Yormark is. Ron, what's up, Ron? Ron W. in the house. Appreciate you, Ron. Thank you for your generosity and donation. Ron says, to the Big 12 Mexico naysayers, if you don't try, you won't know if it would be successful. Completely agree. Like, I think it's an idea that is so unique that anytime you do something like that, people are going to push back against it. I think obviously a lot of people have preconceived notions about what things are like in Mexico too, which does bother me a little bit. And I think that probably plays a small part in this, but I think that's, again, where we just need to be a little bit more open than some of the natural reactions that we have to these things. Be a little bit more open to it. Major sports leagues have definitely started to go this route because everybody sees it, that there are so many people there and that there is at least somewhat of an appetite for American sports. So go try to plant your flag in there. Go try to beat people to that. Again, the SEC does not need to do this. Like, the SEC is going to be totally fine. They're going to get fulfilled TV contract. Like, they will get all the money in the world. They've got their fans. They don't need to do this. The Big 12, you need to find creative things to do. Again, if you were like me and someone that was a big fan of this idea that Yormark might be trying to separate basketball and turn that into sell the TV rights to basketball separately and make extra money that way, you should be on board with this. This is another way to try and create an alternate revenue stream. I would almost kind of liken this to like, hey, I'm never going to be like an engineer. I'm never going to be an engineer. I'm never going to be somebody that makes, multiple hundreds of $1,000s per year, generally based on my profession and what I do. So I got to hustle a little bit, man. I got to get multiple revenue streams coming in. And that's what I'm doing. If I tried to play the game and become like an engineer, I'd be screwed. Like, I don't have that in me. But what I can do is hustle. And what I can do is explore different avenues and multiple revenue streams and all of that. That's what the Big 12 is trying to do. They're in that position. You're not going to out-engineer the SEC or the Big 10. Just not going to happen. You're not going to do it. So, Ron, 1, I appreciate your support. 2, I appreciate the comment. 3, just appreciate you being here, my friend. Thank you, Ron. Shout out to Ron W. there. Starter 179. I love these types of perspectives that you guys are giving me too. Starter 179 says, I went to Tech and we had a ton of students from Monterrey. People don't realize how tied in Texas and the Mexican economies are. Like that. Dig it. Monterrey, 5 million people, apparently, where they're going to play the football game, just to place that for you. And Starter 179 says when he was at Tech, they had a ton of students from Monterrey. Great perspective. Like, this is why I appreciate you guys. You guys have always helped me out with a lot of this stuff, with this, like the new schools coming in, letting me know about things like this that I'm not as aware of. So thank you, Starter 179. Great contributions overall in the chat here tonight. Then we got Rob S. What's up, Rob? Rob says, if this generated $7 million a year for the conference, that's $500K per school. Put that in your NIL fund. How many want an extra $500K for NIL? Yes, Rob. Or if, because I think if it's coming through the school, that would theoretically, I don't know that you would be able to use that for NIL, but what you can use it for, because I know like a lot of the conversations that we're having like in K-State circles right now is like, okay, yeah, you need to keep up with NIL, but you also now have 2 really good coaches that are hot commodities and have definitely been pursued by others. You need to be able to pay your damn coaches. And that's one of the things I've said for a long time is scary about the widening gap between the SEC and Big 10 is, can you afford to keep your coaches? If it's nothing for, like Missouri, they're going to pay Dennis Gates like $4 million next year, which is, to me, that's, I think certainly over what his market value should be, even though he had a nice year last year. That's over what his market value should be. But if you're making SEC money, even if you're farting around at the bottom of the conference, like Mizzou has been for a long time, you're making SEC money, like you can throw that sort of money at a coach, and it will become harder to keep coaches because schools like that can just fling more money out there. It's like Purdue. Purdue had like Chris Kleiman on their hot board when they were hiring a coach this offseason. And it was like, on one hand, you're like, okay, imagine the hubris of Purdue, of all places, thinking that they could do that. But a part of it is because they just figure like they can just throw way more money at it because of what their TV contract is going to be. So yes, if it's an extra $500K, if it's an extra $1 million per school, whatever it is, that can go to keeping your great coach. Texas Tech fans, you love Joey McGuire. You want to keep him around. You need a little extra change to help dump into his pocket every single year. And Tech might be a bad example because I know Tech has pretty deep pockets. But all of that really helps. So, yeah, I mean, as a K-State fan, I would definitely be here for it to have an extra $500K to play around with coach salaries. Assistant coaches, Colin Klein at K-State got offered the Notre Dame offensive coordinator job this offseason. If you have a little extra money to throw around to keep a guy like that from leaving, it's huge. That's huge. So, Rob, thank you for that. And I see, God, sorry, clicking on all sorts of stuff in here. I see, Rob, the message came in twice. So, thank you for that. Not sure if you meant to send it twice, but either way, I very much appreciate your support of the channel here. And it's a great comment to add in there. I appreciate that. Jim, what's up, Jim? I see Jim with a donation. I don't see a comment or a question here, Jim. So thank you for your support. If I'm missing something, please try to let me know. But very, very much appreciate you chipping in and donating to the chat here tonight. Thank you for your support. I'm scanning the chat here. It seems like you guys, I'm not seeing it. Has there been a lot of pushback in the chat here tonight to Mexico? Feels like I saw a lot more of it like on Twitter than I have so far in the chat here tonight. So I do appreciate that. Jeremy says Mexico thing, low risk, high reward. Yeah, I mean, I am pleasantly surprised here. Pleasantly surprised. It appears most people have come at this with quite the open mind. You know what is funny about this too, for all the truck stop conference jokes? How about the truck stop conference being sophisticated enough to be traveling internationally, huh? Where's the Pac-12 at? Pac-12 should be all about that international travel life, taking European vacays and stuff like that. Here's the Big 12. Here's the Big 12 out here mixing it up, getting into Mexico and going to international locations for their games. We're not playing every game at Buc-ee's. We're going to Monterey. You ever been to Monterey? Pac-12. This isn't Buc-ee's. You're not in Buc-ee's anymore. I missed a little bit of this article because there were another couple blurbs I wanted to throw at you here. So the article from the Houston Chronicle says the Pac-12 has played games in Sydney, Australia, and the Big Ten, ACC, and Notre Dame have gone overseas for games in Dublin, Ireland. Along with football and basketball, the Big 12 also has interest in playing baseball and women's soccer games in Mexico. If the Mexico games go well, the Big 12 could pursue a bolder approach. Get ready for this. Because I knew this would be one to throw out there that people love. And I feel like this got really buried in the story. But it says, if the Mexico games go well, the Big 12 could pursue a bolder approach with future games in Europe and Africa. So if this goes well, the Big 12 could be trying to expand to Europe and Africa, man. I mean, that is bold. That is definitely bold. But it makes sense to me why Mexico would be the first stop here, because you just have so many obvious connections, a sports hungry sort of place with a massive audience that has been untapped by college sports. Like even going over to Europe, or like we just saw, the Pac-12 was played in Sydney, Australia. There have been games played in Dublin, Ireland. I mean, hell, I remember as a very young kid, K-State in like 1990, was it 1 or 2? 2 maybe? They played the Coca-Cola Bowl. They were playing games in Tokyo. Bill Snyder took K-State to go play Nebraska in Tokyo once upon a time. So things like that have been tried. But, Tokyo is just like, it's so much further away. You don't have any logical connections within the conference. Like, it would make sense to me how that would be a less successful sort of venture here, where you'd have more of a chance to legitimately start building some inroads there. So I am here for it. Our web appreciates you, man. Our web says chat IQ greater than Twitter IQ. Viva Mexico. Yes. You are so right about that, our web, that you guys in the chat are much more sophisticated individuals. So thank you for that. Sorry, Twitter. Look, I'm on Twitter all the time. All right. We're all savages out there. We are all savages out there. Provo Cougar fan. Thank you for being here, Provo Cougar fan. Provo Cougar fan says, Como dice Jeremy, USF, Apestra ir Pumas. I'm sure that I just botched that whole thing. And after I'm sitting here being like, hey guys, let's go to Mexico, be open to this idea, I'm just going to bumble through this with just horrible like Spanglish. Totally understand. I took Spanish through like my junior year of high school, but have not done much since then. So I know that I'm butchering that. I'm sorry, Provo Cougar fan, if I completely slaughtered that. But hey, USF, and Pumas has got to be Cougars, right? That's got to be Cougars. That's got to be a Cougars reference, I would think. Provo Cougar fan. Cat fan in Huskerland, aka Daniel Osborne, checking in again. Thank you, Daniel. Thank you as always. Daniel says the Big 12 can have a yearly Day of the Dead football game in Morelia, Mexico. Hey, I like that. What is Day of the Dead? I forget what day that is specifically. Okay, November 1st. November 1st. You're right. November 1st. Although this year it's on a Wednesday. I guess it says it does extend into Thursday the 2nd too. So you can do like a little Thursday night football in Mexico, Day of the Dead game. I'm here for it, Daniel. See, Daniel, that is the kind of thinking we need. Get this man on the horn with Brett Yormark. This is the open-mindedness that we need in the Big 12 now, Daniel. You've got it nailed down. My friend. And there is one more piece to this. The Big 12 is going to allow all access to television cameras in games. This one, I think, seemingly has been a little bit more palatable to a wide audience. This is from Ross Dellinger, although there have been multiple reports and stories again on this, but says the Big 12 is exploring a plan with its media partners to modernize the broadcast of its football games, including having live in-game interviews, more access to locker rooms before and after games, and recording live audio of its coaches before the game and beyond. During meetings here this week, Big 12 administrators and football coaches discussed the plan at length, and the league supposed so the Big 12 declined official comment, but sources have said that has been discussed this week by the Big 12. And this is something, this is going to make like everybody's experience better. Like I could get how you would say like, hey, I've got X problem with Mexico, Y problem with Mexico, and like I'm not getting to go on the trip. Like how is this improving getting more access to locker room speeches, things happening on the sideline, coaches mic'd up? It's going to do nothing but enhance your TV experience, man. It's going to do nothing but enhance your TV experience and make things better for all of us. And guess what? If you're putting together a better TV product, a more entertaining TV product, you know what that means? TV networks will be more interested in your product. So this one, I think, is a much easier line to trace. You make this more entertaining with what's actually going on the field. And I hear you. Like in-game interviews with coaches, I don't think do you much good. You rarely get a good soundbite. Nobody looks overly happy to be doing it. But if you get access to like mic'd up coaches and you get access to locker room speeches, those kinds of things can really blow up and do you a lot of good and make it more entertaining and get viral clips. And we've seen it in the Big 12 twice recently, and they're both K-State examples. I apologize. It's what I know. It's what I'm around. I'm going to cite them both, but K-State legitimately got a song by a rapper, Lil Baby, from 2019 into the Billboard Hot 100 simply because of a locker room video of them clapping along to it in a game at Oklahoma State earlier this year. Caught fire, became a TikTok trend, total sensation, really helped brand K-State because they allowed a little bit of locker room access. And that was K-State voluntarily doing that. The other thing I would say, the Dallas Cowboys had mics and cameras going in their draft room when they took Deuce Vaughn in the 6th round of the draft, and the whole storyline was there with his father being able to make the pick, who's a scout for the Cowboys. That clip's been everywhere. All those clips have been everywhere. Good Morning America was asking them for an interview. Like, it was in the Daily Mail, which is in the UK. Like, that got the Big 12 brand overseas to the UK because there were mics and access in there, and it created a viral sort of TV moment. Like, these are the kinds of things that you can get by doing this. And I'm sure coaches hate it. I'm sure there are some administrators that hate it. I'm sure people will be thinking of all the ways that could go wrong. But think of all the ways that could go right. And I've seen it just in my own personal backyard. I have seen it work and work brilliantly for K-State here very recently. So I'm very much on board with that idea. And much of the league administrators seem to be in the same boat, because we're going to get to some quotes here. I think it was Dennis Dodd, actually, who got the quotes from some of the league admins, but I'll continue reading here. It says, modernizing game broadcast is a small piece of a larger plan that first-year Commissioner Brett Yormark is leading. The broadcasts of professional sports games have continuously evolved as leaders look to keep the attention of younger audiences in this social media world. Again, younger, hipper, cooler, right? Younger, hipper, cooler. If you're getting to hear mic'd up coaches and see access in the locker room and what's being said there, like that, That makes it easier, yes, to capture the attention of folks who are younger. More networks have started to expand access to interviews in locker rooms, but college sports have, for the most part, remained the same. Here's a quote from Dave Aranda. Have I said that I love Dave Aranda? I'm going to say it again. I love Dave Aranda. Here's a quote from Mr. Aranda. He says, just being a fan of golf, being a fan of other sports, basketball, when I see that there, that engages me. Not knowing all the details of this particular matchup or the importance of this game, when you're brought into the inside like that, it connects those dots. Love that point from Aranda. If you're more of a casual fan, you don't know all the storylines going on here, but you get to hear a fiery locker room speech. Now you're a little bit more invested. You hear somebody mic'd up on the sideline talking about something going on in the game, some beef they have with somebody out there, whatever it might be. You're a little bit more invested, right? All these things can bring you more invested into what it is that you're actually watching. Here's a quote from Dana Holgerson. Dana Holgerson says he, being Yormark, is encouraging that. Fox and ESPN are really encouraging that. It's just going to market our kids and teams more because of cell phones and cameras. Everything I say and do is being recorded. Everything I know is being seen. I might as well go ahead and embrace it. That's the attitude. Dana Holgerson didn't say, hey, I love this. This is my favorite thing in the world. 100%. He said, the world has changed. I might as well go ahead and embrace it. That's the attitude I'm trying to get you to. You don't have to love it, but you need to be willing to embrace it. Holgerson closed with, it's where it's headed. It's the future of how you're going to watch games. And Jeremiah Donati, the athletic director at TCU, he says, we haven't evolved probably as fast as we need to. We've got to help them, being the rights holders. We've got to help them. The better product they put out, the more they're going to continue to invest in us. It's a no-brainer. That's just it. We've talked about the Pac-12's problems here recently. Lots of competition with like UFC, WWE, all the NBA, all these entities coming up with their rights. A lot of competition in the live sports space. It's not nearly as much just to grab cash and throw it at any live sports game as it used to be. People are getting more stringent. ESPN's going through layoffs. You have to give them more of a reason to invest in your product. You're going to have to work more. You can't just say, hey, we're the Big 12. We're showing up. You got to pay us $40 million per school per year, because that's what the Pac-12 tried to do, saying, hey, we're a college football conference. We think we should get $40 million per year per school. And they said, to hell with you, man. You're not getting that. You've got to be providing value. And this is a way to look to provide extra value, make it a more compelling TV product, and more people will watch. You know, I mean, that's pretty basic math. The more compelling your product is, more people are going to watch it. So I am definitely here for that. Our web says with ESPN's XFL experience, bueno for the Big 12. Yeah, I saw someone bring up XFL, and honestly, like I didn't really watch enough of the XFL when it went through its little foray to really truly know what that was like. But it seemed like people took to that pretty well at the time, right? That was like right before the pandemic. Everybody was getting all into that. Like they seem to generate a legitimate amount of interest, at least from me as just a neutral outside observer could see. The people started to get really into that. And I think some of that access definitely helped. And yes, was that like an unconventional thing? Was that what an NFL broadcast is? No, it was a little bit different. But once again, you've got to be different than the SEC and the Big Ten. You can dislike it, but you've got to accept it. You have to be offering a little bit of a different product. And Robert, a good way to just close this out here. Robert says, goal. I don't have a great goal call. I have broadcasted a couple of K-State soccer games back in my day on TV, but I went with just like a standard, like, just saying goal loud, punch it pretty quick. I tried to stay in my lane on that. I was not trying to go out there with like the crazy goal call. So I know I sort of like half-assed it there for you, Robert. I apologize. We're also at the end of a live chat. I've been talking for an hour and 8 minutes. So I'm a little tired. I'm a little tired here at this point in time. But anyway, I think that is going to wrap it up. Proud of you guys tonight. Seemed like a lot of open minds in here. Hopefully I got you a little bit more comfortable, a little bit more on board with these ideas that the Big 12 is throwing out there. And of course, we got the breaking news dropped on us too, that ESPN likely out, according to Dennis Dodd, likely out as a contender for the Pac-12's primary media rights here. So it turned into a pretty busy night, pretty fun night, pretty fun show. You guys can support the channel on Venmo. It is John-Kurtz-4. To do that, I would very much appreciate those of you who do. You make this channel possible. You want to support the channel for free, just like the video on your way out. Leave a comment underneath the video. after it is done. Love me, hate me, agree, disagree, whatever. It all does help. So I very much appreciate that. Continue to spread the word to your friends and family, social media, word of mouth. If they are Big 12 fans, if they're conference realignment fans, if they are college football fans, let them know about this channel. Make sure you're subscribed. Click that bell so that you're getting alerts when I'm dropping content and when it is that I'm going live. And hey, let's just keep building and growing this community that we have. I appreciate all of you guys. Thank you for being here. I bid you adieu. Enjoy the rest of your Wednesday, and I will talk to you guys soon.